In the pine-scented hills of northern Georgia, James Mitchell's retirement took an unexpected turn when he first moved to a new neighborhood near the woods. He noticed an unusually large bobcat roaming the area and initially thought it might be pregnant. He soon discovered it was actually a male bobcat, simply overweight due to regular feeding by kind-hearted neighbors who provided food for local wildlife. Unlike other bobcats who preferred staying away from humans, this bobcat always wandered alone and seemed more comfortable near houses. James began leaving food for him and affectionately named him Fat Orange. Over time, the bobcat recognized his name, grew affectionate, and began trusting James. But then, one fateful morning, the bobcat suddenly falls ill. James had to risk everything to bring the bobcat in. And what began as an encounter with a solitary neighborhood bobcat evolved into an extraordinary companionship. Before we start, hit the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. The moving truck pulled away from James Mitchell's new home just as the September sun began its descent behind the pine-covered hills of northern Georgia. At 67, James had finally made the decision to leave Atlanta's bustling suburbs for this quiet neighborhood tucked against the edge of the Chattahoochee National Forest. His daughter Emily had worried about him living alone so far from the city, especially after losing Margaret 2 years ago. But James needed the peace that only nature could provide. As he stood on his wraparound porch, breathing in the crisp mountain air scented with pine and earth, movement near the tree line caught his attention. A large, tawny form emerged from the shadows. A bobcat, but unlike any he'd ever seen. This creature was enormous, its belly hanging low, its gait more waddle than prowl. James rubbed his eyes, wondering if the stress of moving had affected his vision. "Well, I'll be," he muttered, adjusting his glasses. The bobcat paused, turning its tufted ears toward him, then continued its slow journey across the yard toward the neighbor's house. Over the next few days, as James unpacked boxes and arranged furniture in rooms that still echoed with emptiness, he spotted the rotund bobcat several more times. Each sighting left him more puzzled. The animal's size suggested pregnancy, but something about its movements, its solitary behavior, didn't quite fit. His neighbor, Betty Hawkins, a spry woman in her 70s, solved the mystery on his 4th day there. She appeared at his door with a casserole dish and a warm smile. "Thought you might appreciate a home-cooked meal while you're settling in," she said, her eyes twinkling behind wire-rimmed spectacles. As they sat at his kitchen table, James mentioned the unusual bobcat. Betty laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "Oh, that's our neighborhood celebrity. We call him Big Boy, though everyone seems to have their own name for him. He's been around for about 3 years now." "But the size? I thought perhaps it was pregnant?" No. Betty shook her head, still chuckling. "He's male, just incredibly well fed. You see, when he first appeared, he was skinny as a rail, clearly struggling. Old Mrs. Peterson started leaving cat food out for him. Then the Johnsons began doing the same. Before long, half the neighborhood was feeding him." James frowned slightly. "Isn't that dangerous? Wild animals depending on humans?" Betty's expression grew thoughtful. "Perhaps. But Big Boy is different. Most bobcats keep their distance, but he seems to prefer our company to his own kind. Never seen him with another bobcat. Just wanders from house to house, alone but not quite wild anymore." That evening, James sat on his porch with a cup of chamomile tea, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of amber and rose. Sure enough, the corpulent bobcat appeared, moving with surprising grace despite his bulk. This time, instead of passing by, the animal paused at the edge of James's property. amber eyes meeting his across the distance. Something in that gaze stirred a long, dormant feeling in James's chest. Since losing Margaret, and especially after their beloved tabby Whiskers had succumbed to feline distemper just months before the move, he'd built walls around his heart. But this solitary creature, caught between wild and tame, touched something deep within him. "You're a lonely soul too, aren't you?" James said softly. The bobcat's ear twitched, and for a moment, James could have sworn he saw understanding in those wild eyes. The next morning, James found himself at the local pet store, filling a cart with high-quality cat food. The teenage clerk raised an eyebrow at the quantity. "Got a lot of cats, mister?" "Just one," James replied, then added with a wry smile, "A rather large one." That evening, he set out a bowl of food at the edge of his property, then retreated to watch from his porch. The bobcat appeared like clockwork, approaching the offering with cautious interest. As he ate, James spoke softly, maintaining a running commentary about nothing in particular: the weather, his plans for the garden, memories of Whiskers. "I think I'll call you Fat Orange," he mused, noting the russet tones in the bobcat's coat. "If you don't mind, that is." Days turned into weeks, and a routine developed. Each evening, James would set out food and sit on his porch, talking to Fat Orange as the bobcat ate. Gradually, the distance between them decreased. Fat Orange began lingering after meals, grooming himself while James read aloud from whatever book currently occupied his nightstand. One October evening, as maple leaves danced on the breeze like copper butterflies, James decided to test their growing bond. "Fat Orange," he called softly as the bobcat finished his meal. The animal's head snapped up, ears forward, eyes locked on James. "You know your name," James breathed, wonder coloring his voice. Fat Orange took a step closer, then another. James remained perfectly still, hardly daring to breathe. The bobcat was now only 10 feet away, closer than he'd ever come before. "That's it, boy. I won't hurt you. Never." Something shifted in Fat Orange's posture, a relaxation, a trust beginning to bloom. As autumn deepened, their bond grew stronger. Fat Orange began greeting James with soft chirps and purrs, rubbing against the porch posts when James appeared. Other neighbors noticed the special relationship developing. "He's never been that friendly with anyone else," Betty observed one afternoon, watching Fat Orange follow James around the yard as he raked leaves. "It's like he chose you." The thought warmed James more than he cared to admit. But with the warmth came worry. Winter was approaching, and while bobcats were well equipped for cold weather, James couldn't help but fret about Fat Orange spending nights outdoors. "I wish I could bring you inside," he told the bobcat one frosty morning, breath misting in the air. But the memory of Whiskers' final days haunted him. The way the vibrant tabby had deteriorated so quickly, the helplessness James had felt, the vet's gentle explanation about feline distemper, and how the virus could linger in a home for months, even years. Unable to bear the thought of potentially exposing Fat Orange to danger, James visited Dr. Patricia Reynolds, the local veterinarian who came highly recommended. "Feline panleukopenia is indeed serious," Dr. Reynolds confirmed, her expression sympathetic as James explained his concerns. "The virus is incredibly resilient. However, with proper disinfection and time, I'd recommend at least 3 months from your previous cat's passing. The risk diminishes significantly." "It's been about 4 months now," James calculated. "That's good. If you're serious about bringing this bobcat indoors, which is quite unusual, I must say, I'd recommend a thorough disinfection of your home with a bleach solution. And when you do bring him in, we should examine him immediately. James left the clinic with mixed feelings. The possibility of giving Fat Orange a home filled him with hope, but the logistics seemed daunting. How does one convince a semi-wild bobcat to enter a house? And would Fat Orange even want to give up his freedom? November arrived with a business trip James couldn't postpone. His former consulting firm needed him for a 3-day engagement in Atlanta. He arranged for Betty to continue Fat Orange's feeding routine, but his heart was heavy as he drove away, watching the mountains disappear in his rearview mirror. The trip passed in a blur of meetings and presentations. Each evening, James found himself on his hotel room balcony, wondering if Fat Orange missed him too. It seemed foolish, attributing such human emotions to a wild animal, but their connection felt real, profound even. He returned home on a dreary Thursday afternoon, rain turning the fallen leaves into a slick carpet of gold and brown. Eager to see Fat Orange, he didn't even unpack before heading to the porch with food. Fat Orange appeared, but something was wrong. The bobcat's distinctive amber eyes were swollen, weeping with discharge. He moved slowly, pawing at his face occasionally. "Oh no," James breathed, his heart clenching. "What happened to you, boy?" Fat Orange mewed plaintively, a sound that broke James's heart. An eye infection, most likely, though James couldn't be sure. What he did know was that Fat Orange needed help, and he needed it now. The rain intensified as James made his decision. 3 months had passed. It would have to be enough. He spent the rest of the day in a frenzy of activity, mixing bleach solutions and scrubbing every surface in his home. Carpets were steam cleaned, air vents vacuumed, every trace of Whisker's presence lovingly but thoroughly erased. By evening, the house reeked of disinfectant, but James felt a sense of accomplishment. The next morning, he enlisted Betty's help. "You want to do what?" she asked, eyes wide. "I need to get him to the vet, and then, if he's willing, bring him home." Betty studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Let me get my gardening gloves. They're the thickest ones I have." Together, they devised a plan. James would offer Fat Orange his favorite treats, leading him into a large dog carrier borrowed from another neighbor. It seemed simple enough in theory. In practice, it took 2 hours of patient coaxing. Fat Orange, despite his discomfort, remained wary of the carrier. But his trust in James won out. With Betty standing by with a blanket, just in case, James managed to guide the bobcat into the carrier with a trail of salmon treats. The drive to the veterinary clinic was surreal. Fat Orange yowled twice, then settled, pressing against the carrier door nearest to James's seat. "It's okay, boy. We're going to make you feel better," James soothed, one hand on the carrier. Dr. Reynolds and her staff were prepared, but still visibly amazed when James carried in the oversized bobcat. "Well, this is a first," the vet admitted, peering into the carrier. "He's certainly substantial." The examination revealed conjunctivitis, easily treatable with antibiotics. More surprisingly, blood tests showed that Fat Orange had antibodies for feline panleukopenia. "He's been exposed to the virus before and survived," Dr. Reynolds explained. "He has natural immunity. Your concerns about bringing him into your home are unfounded, at least regarding distemper." Relief flooded through James. As the vet tech gave Fat Orange a thorough bath, a process that required 3 people and resulted in everyone being soaked, James made another decision. "I'd like to have him neutered if possible, and microchipped." Dr. Reynolds smiled. Already thinking like a pet owner. We'll need to keep him overnight for the surgery. Can you pick him up tomorrow? That night, James barely slept. He prepared a room for Fat Orange, the guest bedroom that overlooked the garden. A large litter box stood in one corner, food and water dishes in another. He'd even installed a cat tree near the window, though he wondered if it would support Fat Orange's weight. The next afternoon, he brought Fat Orange home. The Bobcat was groggy from surgery, eyes clear thanks to the medication, and surprisingly docile as James carried the carrier into the house. "Welcome home, Fat Orange," James whispered, opening the carrier door. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Fat Orange emerged, pupils dilated as he took in the indoor environment. He sniffed cautiously, exploring the room with slow, deliberate movements. James sat on the floor, giving Fat Orange space while maintaining a quiet presence. To his amazement, within an hour, Fat Orange had used the litter box. "You clever boy," James praised, overcome with emotion. "You understood right away." Over the following days, Fat Orange's adaptation continued to astound. He quickly learned the layout of the house, claimed the living room sofa as his favorite spot, and developed a routine that mirrored James's own. Morning coffee was accompanied by Fat Orange's breakfast, afternoon reading sessions became cuddle time, and evenings were spent watching nature documentaries together. But it was during his work-from-home days that James discovered something that tugged at his heartstrings. Checking his security camera app during a video conference, he saw Fat Orange spending hours by the front door, waiting. "He misses you when you're gone," Emily observed during a video call, watching Fat Orange drape himself across James's lap, just like Whiskers used to. The comparison no longer hurt. Instead, it felt like a continuation, as if Whiskers had somehow sent Fat Orange to fill the void he'd left behind. As winter settled over the mountains, Fat Orange transformed. The combination of regular measured meals and indoor activity helped him shed the excess weight. His coat grew glossier, his movements more agile. He developed a playful streak, batting at feather toys and chasing laser pointers with kittenish enthusiasm. "He's like a different cat," Dr. Reynolds marveled during a checkup. "Though I suppose I should say Bobcat. The weight loss has probably added years to his life." James beamed with pride. "He's certainly more energetic, though he still enjoys his afternoon naps." "Don't we all?" the vet laughed. One snowy evening in January, as they sat before the fireplace, James with a book, Fat Orange purring like a diesel engine, Emily called with news. "Dad, I'm pregnant," she announced, joy radiating through the phone. "Oh, sweetheart, that's wonderful. We're thinking of coming for a visit next month. I can't wait to meet your famous Fat Orange." After the call, James looked down at the Bobcat, who had rolled onto his back, paws in the air, completely trusting and content. "You're going to be a grand cat," James informed him. "Think you're ready for that responsibility?" Fat Orange chirped in response, reaching up to pat James's face with one enormous paw. The gesture, so gentle despite the power behind it, reminded James of something Betty had said months ago. "It's like he chose you." But now James understood it differently. They had chosen each other. Two solitary souls who had found their way through loss and loneliness to create something extraordinary. Not quite wild, not quite tame, but perfect in its imperfection. As snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the world in pristine white, James felt a contentment he hadn't experienced since Margaret's passing. Life had a way of bringing unexpected gifts, he realized, Sometimes they came in familiar forms, and sometimes they came as overweight bobcats with trust issues and a fondness for salmon treats. "Thank you, Fat Orange," he whispered into the fur between the bobcat's ears, "for choosing me, for trusting me, for coming home." Fat Orange's purr deepened, vibrating through James's chest like a healing frequency. Outside, the wild called to its own, but inside, love had built a bridge between two worlds, creating something new. A family forged not by blood or species, but by the simple, profound act of caring for another living being. Spring would come again, as it always did. Emily would visit with her new baby. The garden would bloom with fresh life, and Fat Orange would likely spend hours chattering at birds through the window. But for now, in the gentle glow of the fireplace, with snow falling like a benediction and a purring bobcat in his lap, James Mitchell was exactly where he needed to be.